Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
My spouse told me it was merely an innocent infatuation, and I was acting out of jealousy. I replied that she might be correct. Then, without saying anything, I forwarded captures of her messages to the wife of the guy she was interested in. Now her device is ringing nonstop. Turns out it wasn't so innocent after all. I'm 41 and handling the fallout from what my wife described as a simple infatuation. Hint: it turned out to be anything but simple. A brief overview. I've been wed to Sarah for 12 years. She's 38 and handles marketing at a technology firm. I operate a modest building company. I do quite well financially. We reside in a nice area. No children, as we decided against it. We usually got along well until lately. Around 3 months back, Sarah began talking about this new colleague at her job. Derek Thompson, the group supervisor. He had just moved from their branch in Seattle. Initially, it was typical office talk. Derek mentioned this. Derek proposed that. I didn't pay much attention. But then it became strange. Derek turned into the central figure in all her discussions. She'd return home sharing tales of how amusing Derek was, how clever he was with advertising plans. She brought up eateries that Derek suggested we visit. She even recommended I change to a certain type of coffee since Derek believed it was superior. I began to notice more. Sarah abruptly became very focused on her looks during workdays. Fresh outfits showed up in her wardrobe. She took more time applying cosmetics. She got her hairstyle updated more regularly. She began staying late at the office more often, always on assignments that supposedly included Derek. Last Friday evening, we were viewing television when her phone kept notifying. She was messaging nonstop, chuckling at whatever appeared. I inquired who she was communicating with. She said it was only Derek dealing with troubles in his marriage to Karen. Relationship issues. She was simply offering support. Warning signs all over. I stayed silent but observed more carefully. Saturday morning, I was delivering Sarah coffee while she was in bed when I saw her phone facing up and displaying a new message. The notification revealed Derek's name and a portion of text saying, "I wish I could chat with you more," without K becoming doubtful. I acted like I hadn't noticed, but my gut sank. That wasn't professional dialogue. Later that day, while Sarah was preparing, I heard her phone alert again on the bedside table. Another notification from Derek visible on the lock display. "You appeared stunning in that blue outfit the day before." That afternoon, when Sarah headed to her yoga session, I made a choice I'm not thrilled about. I knew her phone code from observing her input it many times. I checked her chats with Derek. What I discovered was a steady buildup over months. It began as job-related talk but slowly turned intimate. Lately, messages featured Sarah sharing pictures of her clothes, asking for opinions on which was nicer. Derek griping about his spouse not getting him. Sarah stating she anticipated their coffee sessions more than any other part of her routine. Derek labeling her gorgeous and claiming he pondered her all the time. The latest back and forth from that morning included Derek expressing he hoped they could hang out without fretting over their partners. Sarah had replied with a heart symbol, and perhaps one day. I captured images of roughly 20 exchanges demonstrating the obvious shift from work-oriented to private to unsuitable. Then I replaced her phone precisely where she had placed it. That night, I raised it casually. Inquired if all was fine with the Derek matter since she'd been referencing him frequently recently. She became protective right away. Insisted they were merely buddies. I noted she appeared quite entangled in his private affairs, the marital difficulties and constant interactions. Her cheeks flushed when she thought I could have spotted something. She charged me with being overly suspicious. I mentioned I'd glimpsed some message previews on her screen, and this appeared beyond friendship. That's when she uttered the phrase that decided her outcome. "It's just an innocent infatuation. You're acting jealous." Derek is facing genuine issues with his spouse, and I'm assisting him through them. "If you can't deal with me having guy friends, that's on you." Innocent infatuation. She really voiced it. I said she was likely correct and I was likely just feeling jealous. She appeared content with that answer. Returned to her device right away. Sunday morning, while Sarah was at yoga, I conducted some investigation. Derek Thompson was simple to locate on LinkedIn using his complete name and employer. From there, I found his personal Facebook account. His wife Karen had an open profile connected from his .it appeared like a typical household. 2 children, pleasant home, standard holiday pictures. Karen looked like a good individual based on her updates that I set up a fresh Gmail address and messaged Karen. Informed her she didn't know me, but I believed there was information she should know concerning her husband Derek and a colleague named Sarah. I included the 20 captures and stated I felt she ought to be informed about the situation. Expressed regret for being the messenger but believed she had the right to be aware. Dispatched it Sunday night. Monday morning, Sarah departed for the office as usual. Around 11 a.m., her phone began erupting. Call upon call, message upon message. She was remote working that day, so I could hear her freaking out in the home workspace. Around midday, she emerged appearing as if she'd encountered a spirit. Stated something occurred at the job. Derek's spouse discovered some messages and now she was creating complications. Derek was facing issues with HR. I asked what sort of messages with pretended worry. Sarah asserted they were merely harmless things, but Karen was exaggerating, portraying it as something it wasn't. I proposed that if they were harmless then Derek should be okay. Sarah gazed at me for an extended period. I could see the thoughts processing. She was beginning to suspect what transpired. Inquired if I'd done anything, if I'd reached out to Derek's spouse. I feigned ignorance. Asked why I would do such a thing since I didn't even know Derek's wife's name. She couldn't demonstrate anything, but she suspected. The expression on her face revealed it all. Her phone sounded again. I could overhear her speaking to Derek, asserting she didn't know how Karen obtained the messages, maintaining they were confidential talks. Derek was obviously upset about his predicament and seemingly faulted Sarah for not being more cautious. The repercussions were swift and chaotic. Update 1. 1 week afterward. The past week has been quite the experience. Sarah's innocent infatuation evolved into a total catastrophe, and I've had the best view of the entire spectacle. Monday afternoon, following Derek's frantic calls, Sarah attempted to manage the damage. She contacted her superior to preempt any HR problems, framing it as a misinterpretation of amicable office exchanges. But Karen hadn't merely addressed Derek in private. She'd passed along my captures to Derek's immediate boss and included HR in the email. Derek was summoned to a discussion Tuesday morning regarding improper office communications. Sarah was brought into HR Wednesday for interrogation about their connection. She attempted to minimize it all, but the captures narrated a different tale. The firm enforces policies on office relationships strictly, particularly when there's a boss-employee hierarchy. Derek was officially Sarah's group supervisor. Derek got an official documented reprimand and required awareness workshops. Sarah was reassigned to another group to remove the supervisory link. Both received warnings that any additional improper interactions would lead to dismissal. Wednesday night, Sarah was enraged, vented about how unjust the entire matter was, how they never engaged in anything physical. It was simply talks between pals. I recalled that she'd labeled it an innocent infatuation. She retracted, asserting she didn't intend it that way but couldn't clarify her actual meaning. Thursday introduced further repercussions. Derek's spouse Karen evidently wasn't content with only professional penalties. She'd engaged a relationship therapist and was insisting Derek sever all ties with Sarah, erase her contact, and shift to another division. Sarah discovered all this because Derek phoned her Thursday evening in distress. Karen was warning of separation if he didn't follow her requirements. He was questioning Sarah on their next steps. Sarah appeared stunned that there would be actual fallout beyond the job. When she proposed they might sort something, Derek rejected that firmly, stated he couldn't risk his children over office messages, said they must cease all personal exchanges at once. She attempted to debate, but he ended the call abruptly. Friday morning, Sarah awoke to discover Derek had blocked her contact. His LinkedIn no longer indicated them as linked. She was basically isolated from the individual she'd been emotionally committing to for months. The societal repercussions began emerging over the weekend. A shared acquaintance from Sarah's yoga group noted she'd heard about some turmoil at Sarah's workplace involving wedded coworkers. News was circulating in their social network. Sunday evening, Sarah challenged me outright, stated she knew I'd reached out to Karen in some manner. I told her to verify it. She couldn't but persisted, inquiring who else might have acted. I suggested perhaps Derek had admitted to somebody. Maybe Karen had employed an investigator. Maybe it was simply misfortune. Could be various reasons. She couldn't dispute that reasoning, but I could tell she wasn't convinced. Update 2-3 weeks afterward. 3 weeks since the captures were dispatched and the effects continue to spread further. Sarah's innocent infatuation has turned into the present that persists in delivering. The job scenario steadied but didn't get better. Sarah's new group placement included a stigma. Everyone was aware of the Derek incident. She shifted from being highly regarded to being the lady who entangled with a married boss. Her new superior appeared displeased with the controversy she'd introduced to the organization. Sarah began grumbling about being overlooked for engaging assignments and left out of customer discussions. It seems, possessing a notoriety for unsuitable office connections isn't beneficial for professional growth. Derek's circumstances were more intricate. The official reprimand remained in his records, but he retained his position. Nevertheless, Karen's requests for openness meant she now oversaw his job interactions. Derek had to grant Karen entry to his work email and device to demonstrate he wasn't reaching Sarah. Last week, Sarah overheard via workplace rumors that Derek appeared unhappy at the office. His spouse was mandating he return home directly each day to no post-work gatherings with peers, no extended hours without advance consent. Basically, he was under strict control attempting to preserve his union. Meanwhile, Sarah was managing the communal repercussions. Karen had evidently disseminated the tale with other spouses in their local social circle. Several of Sarah's contacts began treating her distantly at neighborhood gatherings. The story circulating was that Sarah had been chasing a wedded parent of two, attempting to dismantle a household. The captures offered solid proof that she'd been fostering Derek's grievances about his union. Sarah tried to mitigate by sharing her side. Poor misjudged Sarah merely being a companion to a distressed coworker. Malicious Karen overreacting to harmless office dialogues. Most individuals weren't accepting it. The development in those messages was fairly evident about the direction things were going. Her sibling Lisa came over last weekend and didn't restrain. Informed Sarah she'd been foolish to get mixed up with a married guy, particularly at the job. Highlighted that Derek was never going to abandon his spouse and children for another man's wife. Sarah maintained she hadn't been aiming to disrupt Derek's union, just providing emotional backing. Lisa chuckled and questioned if she truly accepted that justification. Monday morning, Sarah attempted a new tactic with me. Abruptly very engaged in our bond. Preparing fancy meals, proposing short getaways, being exceptionally loving. She suggested we go on a holiday to bond again, solely us. When I inquired what we needed to bond from, she asserted she simply desired meaningful time together free from job pressures. I asked if she meant pressures from Derek. Her expression turned ashen. She attempted to refute any pressures linked to Derek. They hardly conversed at the office now. I noted that hardly conversing with someone you used to message endlessly appeared like a major shift. She lacked a solid reply to that. Wednesday evening, Sarah raised the captures once more. Grumbled that whoever forwarded them to Karen had ruined individuals' existences over confidential talks between friends. I recalled that they were talks where she confessed to having an infatuation on a married guy. She tried to assert that was merely an expression, but I highlighted she'd used those precise terms while facing me. She maintained she didn't intend anything grave by it. I inquired what she did intend then. She couldn't provide a direct response. By Friday, Sarah appeared to recognize her usual methods weren't effective. She inquired straight if I believed our union was at risk. I informed her that hinged on whether she'd gained insight from the Derek event. She asked what she was meant to gain. I clarified that decisions lead to outcomes. Others' unions are important and labeling something innocent doesn't render it innocent. For the initial time since this began, she appeared truly concerned about losing me as well. 2 months since I dispatched those captures and all has adjusted to a fresh routine. Time for the concluding update since this tale has arrived at its end. Derek succeeded in holding his position, but his existence altered significantly. Karen's terms for remaining wedded encompassed complete openness with his interactions, no unmonitored contact with women co-workers, and consistent relationship therapy meetings. Via workplace chatter, Sarah discovered that Derek's communal activities basically concluded. No more post-job outings, no corporate trips without Karen's okay, no secluded meetings with female employees. He was essentially on trial in his own union. His professional progress also halted. The official reprimand in his records removed any opportunity for advancement soon. Karen's mandate for interaction oversight rendered him less productive in customer connections. He was basically trapped in his present role forever. Sarah's professional rebound was more gradual. The division shift assisted, but her notoriety suffered lasting harm. She was omitted from prominent assignments and roles involving clients. The advancement path she'd been following prior to Derek's arrival was basically shut to her now. Her communal recovery was even tougher. Karen's distribution of the captures generated a story in their area that Sarah couldn't surmount. She transitioned from being viewed as an accomplished expert to being gossiped about as someone who chased wedded men. A number of her friendships grew tense. Some folks believed she'd violated a boundary that couldn't be repaired. Others simply didn't wish to be linked to the turmoil and controversy. 6 weeks back, Sarah ultimately confessed she knew I'd forwarded those captures to Karen. I didn't refute it any longer. She inquired why I'd acted. I described it was because she'd brushed off my worries as jealousy, described her emotional involvement as an innocent infatuation, and opted to safeguard Derek's emotions over honoring our union. She asserted she'd never planned for things to advance as much as they did with Derek. I highlighted that her messages displayed a distinct progression toward something deeper. She was probing if Derek would be prepared to depart from his spouse for her. She couldn't refute that anymore. The captures rendered her motives clear. She inquired what occurred to us now. I informed her that relied on whether she comprehended why her behaviors were incorrect and was prepared to restore confidence. We began relationship therapy 8 weeks back. Sarah at first attempted to downplay her involvement, asserting she'd merely been a helpful companion who became entangled in another's marital troubles. The therapist wasn't accepting that story, highlighted that Sarah had made intentional decisions to participate in close discussions with a married man, share images, meet alone, and promote his complaints regarding his spouse. It required multiple meetings, but Sarah eventually recognized that she'd been engaging in an emotional liaison. She confessed she'd been drawn to Derek and relished the focus he provided her. She also confessed she'd been checking if he'd be ready to leave Karen for her. The most challenging aspect for her to acknowledge was that she'd been prepared to aid in demolishing Derek's union and harming his kids for her own satisfaction. The therapist compelled her to face the fact that her actions had genuine outcomes for actual individuals. Last month, Derek initiated one last interaction with Sarah. He dispatched a short email stating Karen was expecting their third kid, and they were striving to reconstruct their union. He expressed gratitude to Sarah for assisting him in realizing how much he risked and requested she never reach out again. Sarah displayed the email to me. She appeared sorrowful while reading it, but also seemed to at last grasp the seriousness of what might have been forfeited. She removed Derek's email and blocked his address. Informed me she was prepared to concentrate entirely on repairing our union. We're still attending therapy. Some days are superior to others. Confidence rebuilds gradually, and Sarah's discovering that positive motives don't wipe out poor decisions. She's also discovering that the suffering of others is significant and that marital promises hold value. Derek retained his position and evidently his union, but at the expense of his independence and career opportunities. He decided to place his household above his pride and is coping with the results of nearly forfeiting all. Karen obtained the openness she required and a renewed dedication from her husband. She also received confirmation that her suspicions about Sarah were accurate. Most crucially, she preserved her family structure. Sarah forfeited her professional drive, her communal position, and her husband's confidence. She's laboring to reconstruct all three, but comprehends it will demand time and steady work. I acquired understanding about my wife's personality and limits on what I'll tolerate in my union. I also discovered that occasionally the facts are the strongest instrument accessible. Everyone received precisely what their decisions warranted them. The captures didn't demolish Derek's union or Sarah's standing. Their decisions established the possibility for demolition. The captures simply ensured the appropriate individuals knew what was truly occurring. At times, revealing the facts is the sole method to reinstate equilibrium. Derek and Sarah believed they could chase their emotional liaison secretly without repercussions. They were mistaken. Karen merited knowing what her husband was engaging in. I merit having my worries addressed seriously rather than being dismissed as jealous. Ultimately, everyone confronted the truth of their behaviors. That's not vengeance. That's simply fairness.